coming back to the point of consumers, my proposal here is simple. We need to create institutions and organizations that will work for the consumer side of the conversation, because a lot of major companies today have labor unions to protect the interests of the labor. So they go and negotiate and bargain with the producer to increase wages, to increase perks, which is one of the reasons why there are some companies, very rare companies, where you even have a pension fund for people that have worked in the labor force. And that's very interesting. But that's also a very rare occurrence. But it kind of shows you how good that is for a laborer, that they can have some kind of retirement benefit, which is incredibly interesting. But the problem is that when you increase the labor cost, you increase the cost to the consumer. And there is nobody to fight for us. Yeah, there is absolutely nobody to fight for. There's nobody to fight for us. There is nobody to make sure that producers do not increase the price of goods without any repercussions, because of greed. And laborers don't go about increasing their salaries because of greed. Because let's be honest here, there are many companies where laborers are paid very fair wages, and yet they want an increase in the salary. And this is an issue, right? This is an issue because this increases the cost to the consumer. Now, you have to assume that when the consumer is also a laborer somewhere, meaning when he has to buy something for more cost, his salary should also grow. And when you create this ripple effect, it's going to create problems all across society. Not every industry can match the same salary that some industries can match. When the gap between the industries that can provide certain salaries increases so much, what happens is inflation increases, and an increase in inflation creates huge problems in society. It strains people. Yeah, because what happens is you get the feeling that some people have made it and some haven't. That's very bad. Now, I'm not saying that industries cannot come and revolutionize the economy of a place. What I'm saying is too much increase and inflation in the price to the consumer puts a huge strain on the consumer. And this is why we need consumer protection institutions. So institutions that fight on our behalf. So for example, let's look at it from the producer side of it. So the producer, let's say he's making very good profit, decent profit. Let's say the cost of the raw material increases. Now, there has to be somebody who negotiates with the raw material guy to make sure he doesn't simply increase the price of the raw material just for no reason. That's also crazy. You cannot just keep increasing the price of raw material just because you want to increase it. So you want to see what's happening in the market. You want to negotiate. You want to make sure that the increase is not hitting hard on the laborer or the consumer. Right? So the producer sees an increase in the raw material and he increases the prices. Now this is interesting because what this means is that this cost is passed on to the consumer in order to protect the profits. Yeah. So in this place, the consumer should be able to negotiate with the producer in such a way that everybody feels the pain of it, not just the consumer. So just because the raw material price increase doesn't mean the consumer is the only one who has to bear all the costs, right? If you're making decent profits, you should have a little bit of hit, because I'm also having a little bit of hit. And this is how negotiation works. The best negotiation happens where everybody wins or everybody loses. And in this place, if one party is the only one losing, that's a huge problem. Either everybody wins, like I said, or everybody loses. Now, if you can negotiate, if you can have a relationship, you can reduce the amount of loss that happens in these kind of situations. This is where consumer activism is going to be one of the most important things the Indian society is going to have to take up, because we need these protections. Next example. Let's say the cost of labor increases. Let's say labor wants to increase their costs. Now, if they have low salaries and they're going to increase their costs, the consumer has to kind of negotiate with the union leaders and say, what in the world is this? Why are you doing this? What is happening? And they've got to negotiate, they've got to bargain the increase down. So the laborer is asking for 15% increase. He goes to the producer and the producer says, okay, 15% increase. Well, stop right there. The consumer has to come in. He's got to negotiate and say, wait, 15% is too much. Take 10%, 11%, 9%. This is very important, because you have to understand, not every consumer can afford your product, but they may need it, right? So you going and increasing the price of the commodity just because you want more salary is going to put strain on people who may need the commodity, but they cannot afford it. Yeah, this is the issue that I'm trying to bring up. The consumer side protection is very important. Now, let's say, for example, the labor is having very fair wages. Yeah, he's getting paid market rates, maybe above market rates. He's doing well. Now he wants more salary. This is where the consumer institution would be most effective in fighting a reduction, yeah, in the price of labor. Now, let's say, for example, the laborer is receiving nominal salary, but they feel like they need more, to be able to live more comfortably. One of the best ways of negotiating a deal like this would be the consumer has to say, listen, okay, so you want to live more comfortably. What does that mean, right? So here's what we're going to do. You can create an emergency fund, yeah, and you can put money into the emergency fund. This way, if some laborer falls seriously ill or has got a very bad medical condition, or they fulfill some criteria, you can list down the criteria, you can talk with them what criteria you can use, then they're entitled to use the emergency fund. Now, the emergency fund is an increase to the cost of running the company, running the operation. So the producer feels the hit in the fact that, okay, there's an emergency fund now. I have to put money into that. Now the consumer can say, here's what the consumer can say to the producer, okay, you can increase the price, right? But increase the price only proportional to the increase in the emergency fund. Now the reason why this is very important is because if the consumer has to take the hit of every single laborer getting a 10% raise, that's going to hit the consumer very hard. If you create an emergency fund, which will only be used when necessary, what that means is the contribution to that fund is probably a 1% increase in the salary of the laborer, but the benefits can be achieved more universally. This way, the consumer is able to save money. The laborer gets a little more protection because it's a perk and a benefit that during an emergency is being taken care of. The producer, in this case, who's got no bargaining power, is allowed to increase. Now, if the producer is not allowed to increase the price of the good and he takes his hit, here's another negotiation tactic the consumer can use. He can say, listen, during the next raw material increase, let's say it increases 10%, you don't have to give me only an 8% increase in the cost of the good. You can give me the full 10%, you can round it off completely, you can give me the full 10% increase, because the hit you're taking here, I will give you the benefit of the doubt and I will, make up there. Now, when you do that, what you have to do is, if the price of the good goes below 2.5%, then you have to revise the prices. Yeah, if the inflation, if the raw material increases by 10%, and then it goes back to 2.5%, less than 2.5%, then you have to reduce the prices. But between that range, you can earn the profit. So what this does is, although the producer, right now feels the brunt of the increase in the raw material cost, the consumer says, I will take it. Yes, this is where the consumer loses. He's taking an extra increase in the product's cost, but he's giving the producer the opportunity to also make some extra money to grow the business. Because if a producer cannot make profit in a market, then the producer is doing nothing useful. Productivity must have some kind of proportional increase. At least linear increase. If there's no increase, there's no point in producing. It means what you're producing is not really valuable in the market. Maybe it's valuable today, tomorrow it's not going to be valuable. And that's a very important point we have to understand. Producers have to face issues like this all the time. But if the consumer is there, we are protected. If the consumer is there, we are protected. And these institutions will, basically help us navigate the situations better, protect our cause, and actually, make a more productive capitalist system, right? So this is what a capitalist system should look like. Everybody wins or everybody loses. But always remember, it's not just producer and laborer, it is producer, laborer, and consumer. They are all equally important in their own unique ways. The producer probably a little more because he's the entrepreneur, he is the one that came up with the idea and so on and so forth. So being first in the market gives him the benefit of reaping bigger profits. Thank you for listening. Consider liking the video and comment if you have an opinion. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos of this kind. Thank you.